Hello and welcome back to another special edition of the Modern Divorce Podcast. I am joined again by guest Matson Browning. He is a certified gang expert, former police detective, and local Mesa resident. Matson, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I asked you to come back on after the article came out and the police report was released regarding the Connor Jarnagan attack in late 2022.
Mhm.
Because there was so much in there that seemed to have implications for the Preston Lord investigation and the fallout with the Gilbert PD and Gilbert Goons. So let's just start there. What were your thoughts when you read the police report?
Well, I thought the police report was pretty well written. I mean, good. They investigated it and did what they should have done. I don't think the police report is where the problem lies, and I never have thought. Well, I think that sometimes we, as the community or citizens, we look to people to be held accountable for what's going on in our communities, and which we should, because we live here, we should be safe. But I think the times we need to look at who we need to hold accountable,
Right.
and I think you're doing a great job with that. And people need to be informed and know that this was a good report. I mean, 143 pages, and it was pretty well documented.
Yeah, there's a lot of information in it. Now, for those of you who don't know, here's a quick synopsis of what happened that led to this police report. In December 30th, 2022, Connor was at In-N-Out with his friend. He was approached by a group of 10 to 15 teenagers. They said, "Nice car, you must be rich. Give me your money. You got 20 bucks." He said, "I'm not giving you 20 bucks." They reached in the car to be like, "Fine, I'm going to take your car." Connor was like, "You can't," pushed him. A fight ensued, and Connor was punched in the back of the head with brass knuckles. Everybody fled. Connor went to Dick's. He called Gilbert PD. The other kids left. And that's what started the investigation.
Yeah, it's a typical Gilbert Goon attack.
Very typical. Very typical. And then what happened from there? The next thing is Connor and his parents said that they were made to solve the crime
Hmm.
because Gilbert PD didn't have any leads.
Yeah.
And so Connor's mom posted on Go Gilbert a picture of Connor's head. Connor talked to his friends, and Connor and his mom managed to put together, they got a video of the fight on Snapchat. They got the name of the main attacker along with his cell phone and his address and his picture. And somebody else saw a large group of teenagers in Walmart. So Connor's family gave that to the police, and then the police began investigating. Now, as far as I could tell, what had the police done before they got that information?
Well, let me go back. So this is
Sure.
it's a very well written report with information that they were given.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think that parents should be investigating their own kids' crimes. I think that should be left to trained investigators. I think police officers need to be more than report writers. I think we need to go back into the investigation of crimes. And when I was investigating crimes, it was you get out, you talk to people, you watch, you do surveillance, you sit on Walmart parking lot or on the roof or on the bank's roof, and you videotape, and then you gather all this information, and you swoop in, you make the arrest when the crime's occurring. And I think that's what we need to do, is get back into that style of law enforcement and get away from waiting for people to send us pictures or send us videos. And um and that's law enforcement to me, this proactive policing, and that's what we need to be. Now, back to your question, which I forgot. What was your question again?
Well, it didn't appear that Gilbert did any of that type of independent investigation. It appeared that they waited for the Jarnagans to gather the information and then they took steps thereafter.
Yeah, I think that's what I think. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the way to say this, but there's no way to say it. You can't be lazy. You can't sit behind your desk and wait for people to give you information. If you do, nothing's going to be solved. So I think we need to be proactive. We need to get back into the mindset of where police officers were investigating. So let's investigate and not wait. When you have a crime scene and you have all these people telling you a story, and here's the crazy thing is, I live in the community. I have kids that were raised in the community. We have kids that went to Basha High that were friends with kids that went to Hamilton, Chandler, Perry, Castile. Every school out there, we have friends that go to. It's not that hard to figure out who drives this car or who is this person or where does this person live. And that's what law enforcement needs to do is they need to get back into talking to A to get to B to arrest C. And that's what needs to happen. They didn't need to wait for mom and dad to say, hey, I was on Snapchat and look what I found. It could have been that case could have easily been wrapped up that night.
Okay, but that's not what's happening. I
No,
mean,
it's not.
and Connor's is one example, but we also have a lot of information about Rick Keener's son's attack, which was shelved. And then we saw what happened with Preston Lord's attack, which took, a long time. Certainly nothing was wrapped up that night. So I hear what you're saying when you say the public shouldn't be doing their own investigation, but if they hadn't,
Well, if they hadn't, crimes now wouldn't have been solved. I mean, we can go back years, back to what, 2022, probably prior to 2022, and how many things have parents looked at and handed over and saying, please do something about this. That shouldn't happen. That should not happen. So who do you hold accountable for that? Where does the accountability lie? And I think that's what we need to get to is who do we hold accountable for that? I mean, I give if something happened to one of my kids, yeah, I'd be all over it too.
right,
Be
right.
doing, especially when you're not getting the support and help that you need from whether it's the schools or the police department or whoever else.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is Tyler Freeman is the juvenile who attacked Connor. He had been arrested for a similar attack with brass knuckles 2 weeks prior.
Mhm.
He had been, and he was released, and he was released pursuant to conditions of that juvenile court. But what I wanted to ask you is if you think back to your days as a police officer, if you got a report 2 weeks later of another attack with brass knuckles, wouldn't you immediately think or know, oh, this is similar? Or are there so many crimes that the police departments don't have the ability to kind of make those connections?
Oh no, I mean you got to look at the police department. If a violent crime occurs and the violent crimes unit gets the case and they make an arrest on the person used 2 weeks prior to use brass knuckles, that same violent crimes unit is investigating another one. I mean, common sense says, well, wait a minute, where's this guy? Well, he was released. Well, let's go. Then you pull up photos, photo lineup, boom, case solved.
Okay. So that's what I thought. I thought, hey, how many groups of juveniles are running around making surprise with unknown victim group attacks with brass knuckles in 2 week period? It cannot be so many that we can't make that connection.
Yeah, for sure. I
Okay.
mean, it goes. I agree 100% with you. And I mean, as a gang detective, when I was dealing with gangs, you knew who the drivers were, you knew who the shooters were, you knew who was what cars, you knew who had the cars. You just know all that, but you weren't locked into only one set of gang members. You had to know who was West Side City, who was Bounty Hunter Blood, who was West Side Mesa, who was Southside Chandler. You had to know who was who. And as Gilbert, I mean, I'm going to use Gilbert's word as, safest city in the nation. They would know who's causing the problems because there's so few of these problems that you
Right.
would know.
Right. Okay. So then is it corruption or negligence?
I mean, you throw around the corruption word. I don't think it's corruption. I think it's, I think it's, oh, I think it's laziness. I think um, it's just doing your job and collecting a paycheck. I think is the heart of law enforcement has been taken out by so many different things, and the desire to work hard is taken away um, by all kinds of things. So you just do your time and go home.
I kind of want to talk to you about that because it seems like valley wide, we've got stuff going on. Like the DOJ is embedded in the sheriff's office.
Mhm.
The DOJ did an investigation about Phoenix PD. Mesa PD just recently came out and said they're going to look to put together some internal unit. Like it seems like policing in general is really struggling.
Policing in general is a horrible place to be. I mean, it's really sad because you have a group of guys and girls that want to go out. I'm sorry, you have a group of men and women who want to go out and do their job, and they want to be successful in doing their job, and they want to put criminals behind bars. And as you go and as you become active in fighting crime, you would think that people want you to fight crime, but you find out through the community that they don't. We don't want to be labeled the number one hating city in the nation. We don't want to be labeled as the most violent place to live. And so they start pushing that stuff aside. And it's the underbelly, the dark side of law enforcement is taking good men and women and making them robots and telling them what to do without thinking that it's not going to affect them. And that's the problem with law enforcement, is that I want to work hard, I want to do my job, but it's the people above me who are kind of stopping that from happening.
Okay, so you think this is a leadership failure?
Oh, please, you got what's the saying? It all rolls downhill. Yeah, leadership is the problem, but it's not with just the police department. Who runs the police department? There's a chief of police that runs the police department, but who does he answer to? It's the city manager.
Right.
City manager, and then the city manager, he answers to the city council because all they want is to bring in revenue for their city. They want businesses, they want
Right.
new homes, they want schools. And so whatever the city manager has to do to make that happen, and if it has to be, they'll check the other box for your statistics, or don't report this as a hate crime when it is a hate crime, or we don't need this aggravated assault, make it a simple assault, or the burglaries, was it really a burglary or was it a criminal trespass? Was it, what is it? And I think there's a lot of that goes on.
Okay, so the politics is encouraging policing to stop doing policing. That's it's just so complex. But let's keep going with the police report, because the Jarnagans found the Snapchat video that enabled the police to subpoena Snapchat, and they found lots.
Right. Yeah, they found a lot. But here's what I think. One of the most craziest thing that I think that they found was the Snapchat that says, one of them says, you know what, let's just become a gang already. 2022. And now we've been fighting for how long? Finally, in 2024, they say, okay, now we're going to make them a gang. These guys knew they were a gang from when they started. And the frustrating thing is that we have fought, you have fought, there's been a lot of people in the community who have fought, let's make them a gang. But why aren't we charging them as a gang? They're not sitting on gang charges.
No.
And that's what part of the problem is. If you want to stop a problem, you got to hit it at its core, and you got to show these gang members, listen, you want to be a gang? It's time to play like a gang. Now you're going to hit with a class 2 felony instead of a class 6. You're going to get hit with 3 years prison instead of 3 years probation. And that's what needs to happen with the goons. And anybody that participates in this type of crime is that they need to be hit hard with it, because that's the only way it's going to stop. Remember, this kid did the same thing 2 weeks prior to doing this one. And he was released from juvie. And he probably, where did he pick up the brass knuckles? Went to the liquor store, bought another pair of brass knuckles.
Well, the thing is, I don't know. Like, were those the same brass knuckles?
I
Did
hope.
somebody take the first brass knuckles? We don't know.
Right.
But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, one of the saddest parts of this report was the interview with the father.
Mhm.
When the police came to arrest the brass knuckles attacker, and the dad said, helped the police make the arrest. And they said, listen, he's violent. We can't control him. I allow him to purchase and consume blank because it helps with blank.
Yeah, that was probably the vape pen that the marijuana that they took from the house.
They said he didn't go to school, and the dad allowed him to go and come freely.
As a juvenile.
As a juvenile who the dad knows is violent.
Yeah.
Like that's just it's hard,
Well, see, but that's where you and I can be extremely judgmental, and,
right?
and we don't have a clue what that father's going through. I can
Right.
feel for him,
Mhm.
and I know that there are agencies and there are places and there are people who want to help kids who are in these types of situations, and maybe opportunities to get to them would be nice. Help them out. And that's where, as law enforcement, somebody comes to you with these problems. Okay, what can we do to help you with, where can I help you with solutions to this? And so, that's where I think not just law enforcement but community fails, is where are we going to send these kids to for help?
Right. Because I can't imagine what it would be like to live with a teenager that I was afraid of. And that's
Oh,
probably what this dad was going through.
oh yeah, yeah, I guarantee it. And now he's kicking himself because of the situation he's in. And what's sad, I mean, the criminal side of it is one thing, but as an attorney, there's a whole other, the civil side of it is sometimes worse than the criminal side of it. And so he's going to have to wade through all of that, and because he knew this was going on, and he participated in it in a way that he really didn't know he was participating in it, but he let him go and come and go, and let him, he knew brass knuckles were in the house and all these other things. But you also have to look at what happened to the juvenile system, that they released a kid who father probably told the courts, hey, I need help, and then they released him, and knowing that he committed an aggravated assault with brass knuckles. That shouldn't have happened.
Should not have happened.
Mm.
So much of this has to fall on the prosecutors. The prosecutors are the ones who are handing out 3-year probation sentences. That's not on the cops and that's not on parents.
Yeah, and I had a conversation the other day with somebody. We were talking about the Preston Lord case, and they were upset that well, why aren't they talking to these people? Well, once law enforcement hands over the case to the prosecutor and they make the arrest, law enforcement's out.
Mhm.
They'll use us for trial. They have their own. The prosecutor's office has their own investigators. They have their own people, and we back out and we're done.
Mhm.
And we need to, Rachel Mitchell and those in that office, you know, yeah, why are they handing out a probation for an assault at Santan Park? Or why are they throwing out all the, misdemeanor charges? Okay, I can see. But, when you got these kids committing felonies, which are big kid crimes, they need to be held accountable.
Within the Snapchat conversations, there were multiple group conversations where kids were acknowledging many, many, many assaults. One kid acknowledged that he had thrown a rock at a car earlier in the day, had been chased. They're talking about making plans to kill cops, to die by suicide with cops. Like it was graphic.
Yeah.
Could you? We know that nothing was done to follow up on that. And what I want to know from you is are those conversations in and of themselves enough to get to subpoena more information, to bring in the kids and question them?
Well, I think the guy that threw rock, he say threw a boulder through the went at a car. A lot of that is bragging and is just stupid talk with these guys. However, when they're saying that suicide by cop is the best way, yeah, those people not only are violent, they have the mindset. If they're talking about, they have the mindset to do it, and they are a threat to society, and they need to be dealt with, and they need to be talked to, and whether they need psychiatric evaluations or something, because they're already saying they want to die, and they don't want to do it. They want the cops to shoot them, which is a whole nother uh, mind mess up. But yeah, there's things that need to be done on that. They should be talking to people. They should be, just again, my opinion, only my opinion. They should have a squad of guys that do nothing but this Gilbert Goon stuff, and going out and watching and catching and fighting crime the old fashioned way, and
So
taking
the
care.
Gilbert police chief said, just because kids are bragging doesn't mean it's evidence. That wasn't enough for us to do anything. But they could have, right? They could have questioned the kids. They could have subpoenaed more documents. They could have investigated.
They could have investigated. I think they had enough documents. I think they had all the Snapchat and all the social media that they needed. Um, now, once you have all that, now it's all a matter of linking things together. And this person is this person. And once you link them together, and you see how big this organization really is, that's when you start looking at who do we talk to first? How can we dismantle this organization by talking to this person? Or let's follow this person. They're the most vocal in the Snapchats and bragging about things. So let's follow this person and catch them in crime and take them out of the equation. And I mean, that's just old school police work. You know,
Yeah.
you're
Or
just that.
let's talk to the kids who are in the group but not talking, because they might be able to give information, right? And even in the police report, there were two boys who were arrested. The main attacker, who's fairly hardcore, and then the other guy. And the other guy was a lot less hardcore. He talked to cops. He admitted that there were videos. He led on that there had been quite a few fights with his body language.
Yeah,
And
but you got to remember too. There's the people who bragging that there's 15 plus or 20 plus assaults or 30. I think it was 30 was the number they used that they can be charged with. I mean, that's a lot of assaults. However, you know, the chief was right. Unless you have a victim, you don't have a crime. And so unless these people come forward, then that's when you have the crimes. And that's what happened with the Goons cases. All of a sudden the victims started coming forward, and that's why they could go back and charge and arrest. Now, how do we get these people? Well, you know what? I put a lot of thought in the schools. Um, the schools knew this was going on. The resource officers knew that this was going on. And so those are the guys that should be talked to and should have pulled the kids away from. You just don't show up at school and see a guy with stitches or black eyes and stuff and say, dude, what happened to you? You know, you just got to get out and talk to people. And nobody's doing that anymore. You got to look and you got to talk.
in January of 2024, I think was the first time, or maybe December 23 was the first time that Gilbert PD came up and they said, we have no idea about the Gilbert Goons. We've never heard of the Gilbert Goons. And now looking back, we can see that they weren't using those names. They were using untouchable ninjas, goofy goobers. But if they knew that groups of teens were going around and committing these exact crimes, then is it fair to say we had no idea?
Yeah, I would say it's fair to say you had no idea because you have a city manager that doesn't want a gang problem in their city. So if you take the name away from the organization, you just have a group of kids being stupid. But once you throw the name into a group of kids being stupid, now you have a gang. And so I think what they're trying to do is if we can keep the gang out of the group or keep the name out of the group, now we don't have a gang problem. But we still have 15, 20, 30 punk kids running around Gilbert and, you know, South Mesa and Chandler who are assaulting people violently that need to be dealt with. And that's why I think where the breakdown happened is that we had a group of stupid kids. Kids are being kids. Kids are being stupid. Or do we have a serious criminal syndicate gang?
Right.
And I think if you take the gang out of it, you still got a bunch of kids who are committing crimes that need to be dealt with. And they need to be charged. They need to be held accountable. They're putting kids, I mean, the amount of injuries that these kids have gotten so far, not just physical, but mental, disruptions at schools, breaking up families, all kinds of things that are going on with these guys.
On Saturday, this Saturday, June 28th, 2 days ago or 3 days ago, there were two more groups of attacks recorded on Snapchat. Captions. I wrote down the caption. My shorties really do N-word. None y'all N-word can get up with us. I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not over.
Because behind all these guys that got locked up, underneath them are guys who respect them and who look up to them and who want to be like them. And so you have a group of people who, for whatever reason, have taken on this criminal mindset, thinking that crime is cool or violence is great, or the pack mentality idea, because they need. I mean, just let's be real and honest. They need something that are in their life to take them out of this stuff. My wife always says, give them a lacrosse stick, give them a football, give them a paintbrush, give them a microphone, give them something to do. Because right now, all there is to do in Gilbert, even though Gilbert's a lot of stuff to do, all these kids think they have to do is go in and out and jump people, or go rip stuff off of Walmart or do whatever it is. And that's where they're getting their rushes. So as a police officer, you have to look at the problem. And again, you got to map it out, lay it out. You don't just say it's kids being kids. It's summertime. You have to go and break it down, spend time looking at who these people are, where they're at, what the trends are, what is next that we can see happening. And I need 5 guys to go in and out at Gilbert and Germain, and we want to sit on Office Max roof with video cameras. And when I say they're doing this, everybody swoop in and everybody goes to jail. And that's the type of police work that needs to happen in this. Not just one police car driving through a parking lot every hour and a half. That's not patrolling.
Do we have enough officers to do that?
Well, the answer from the city would be no, we don't. Um, but you have resource officers now, school resource officers, schools out, so you can pull them. You have all the bike units, you can pull them. There's different, detective units that you can call in for overtime. I mean, Gilbert, what they're looking at paying from 150,000 to 350,000 for private security guards to stand in 2 parking garages who have zero arrest authority, that the kids are just going to make fun of anyways. They're calling Paul Blart or Rent-A-Cops or whatever they want to call them. Why don't you stick a couple cops in there who actually make arrests? And there will be, I guarantee it'll change everything. But you have to have guys that want to make a difference and who are going to stand up to these punks and take them to jail. And stand up to their parents who are going to call and complain when their son was put in handcuffs because he's on a parking garage with a bunch of idiots.
Okay, so what is your advice to parents?
Well, number one, know where your kids are. And again, this is easy for me. My kids are all in college or out of college. When I had kids in high school and younger, you know what? Yeah, it's stressful. Being a parent is stressful. However, you're a parent, you need to know where your kids are. And need to know who they're associating with. Most important thing that I can see for a parent is get your kids involved in something. Have them do something. Don't have them sit around on their phones or video games. Have them doing something. And then after that, you just, kids need to be held accountable for things they do wrong, the smallest to the biggest. And that's where they learn. I think the kids learn at home where respect comes from. If some kid says that they hate cops, well, why do they hate cops? It's just like hate. Hate is not something you're born to do. Hate is something that you're taught to do. And so you have to track it down to who's teaching little Johnny how to hate and why are they doing it? So if somebody's saying I hate cops, well, why do you hate cops? Well, they gave me a ticket. They gave you a ticket because you were speeding. You're being held accountable. And that's what we need to do as police officers is we need to explain why we're holding you accountable and what you can do to not be in that position again. I think there needs to be a lot of communication. And I think communication is the breakdown of society now as we see it. I mean, we can see it all through politics and all through everywhere, families and everything else. We need to take time to talk.
And what would you do first? Let's say you're town manager or police chief or whoever you need to be. What would you do to get Gilbert on track?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, um, if I was a city manager, I'd say we have a problem. And I go to the people who are going to help me solve that problem, which is the police chief. And I would say, what we need to talk about this, we need to take care of it. Do we need to hire more people? Okay, then let's get the resources to hire more people. Where are problem areas? You have to look at where your problem areas are. Are your problem areas in, downtown Gilbert, on a Friday, Saturday night with all the bars and stuff? Or are your problems on Friday and Saturday night in Higley and Riggs area? You need to take your resources and put them where they need to be. And you need to say, you need to be, they just need to admit the fact that, you know what, we can do better and we will do better. And I think that people people respect that, and they can get behind that.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. So, can I ask a little bit more about the DOJ? Like,
Yeah.
why is the DOJ investigating Phoenix, and why are they embedded in the sheriff's office?
Well, we'll start with the sheriff's office. They're embedded with the sheriff's department because of what happened when Arpaio was there. And so when Arpaio was doing all the illegal immigrant stops and violating people's human rights, that's when the DOJ came in, and he was sued on multiple levels. And to get the sheriff's department back on track, the DOJ came in. Now, after Ohio left, Pinzone came in, and Pinzone did a great job. In my opinion, I thought he was a great sheriff. And he got the sheriff's department back on track doing what they're supposed to be doing, but the DOJ was still there. And so that's why the DOJ is there, because of the lawsuits and because of their findings against Arpaio years ago. Now, the DOJ in Phoenix is over civil rights complaints, is over corruption within the police department and things like that. And the findings that the rulings, or not rulings, but the findings they had recently saying that Phoenix PD was at fault for these things. And now the DOJ is going to step in and help guide the ship while the new police chief is trying to get his people in line with what the DOJ wants.
Okay, I want to make sure I understand the process.
Okay.
So, an individual plaintiff sues civilly for a civil rights violation.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that the police can be sued for?
Oh, you can be sued for anything. Yeah, you can be sued for, search and seizure, civil rights, excessive force, anything that a person can be arrested for, the city can be sued for.
But you
Uh,
can't sue them for doing their job poorly. You can't sue them
um,
for failing to investigate
no,
or, failing to prevent crimes. You can't do that. It has to be some sort of constitutional right that's violated because the police have immunity.
right. Otherwise, I mean, you can't sue for not doing your job because that's an in-house type thing. So hopefully, the police department would take care of that.
Okay, so an individual plaintiff sues because they've gotten their civil rights violated, Fourth Amendment, excessive force, whatever. And how does the DOJ come in?
The DOJ is then, you know what? It's funny because anytime I heard DOJ wanting to come and look at anything, it's like, dude, I'm out. I don't want to get involved with this. So the DOJ would get involved because they sue federally, and then it goes to the usually what happens, the things that I've heard, and again, I'm not an expert on this. I was a police officer, and luckily in my career, I was never had to deal with anybody wanting to do this type of stuff on my investigations. Um, Usually they go to the FBI, and then the FBI will start up an investigation, and then the FBI will then go to the Department of Justice, who will then come down with the rules. Okay, you're being sanctioned for these type things, and a lot of that comes from because the departments are, and I haven't used these words in a long time, but they're accredited. So the departments are accredited through the federal government, which then opens themselves up for, you know the feds to come in and look at them if they're accredited by them. Does that make sense?
A little bit. So all the people in Gilbert who are saying, "What do we do? How do we get accountability?" Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, I unfortunately for the people in Gilbert that want accountability, the best thing they can do is talk to the people who are in charge. Because we're not talking about you can look at Gilbert and you can say they did their job. You know, you can look at Queen Creek PD. I mean, Queen Creek PD did their job. It might maybe took longer than we thought getting the Preston Lord murders in custody, but they're still in custody. So there's really nothing to investigate for the DOJ or anybody else there. Gilbert PD is the same thing. We did our job. We see it different from you see it possibly, but that doesn't mean we didn't do our job. What we need to do is our job better. And so what we need to do is get the people who can make the decisions on top, because remember, everything rolls downhill. You got to get the thing on top to start that ball rolling because your lieutenants need to be held accountable, your sergeants need to be held accountable, your detectives, whether they need alternative styles of investigation classes or how to investigate class. You know, there's a lot that can be done, but you have to, first of all, come out and say, yeah, I got to do something. Because if you're just sitting around saying, we're great. Gilbert PD, we're awesome. You know, Mesa, we're smooth. You know, and I don't think any police department can ever say that because it's a business, you know?
It seems like an impossible job. To be fair, it seems like policing right now is really, really hard. It's really hard to make people happy. But
Well, you gotta look at who are you trying to make happy? You know, you're dealing with the worst of society. And then when you get them locked up on charges, then you have to deal with the victims who the worst of society have affected. So they're upset. And so are they upset? You know, that whole victim mindset of the whole, you know, you're upset, then you feel remorse, then you feel anger, you know, this whole circle of emotions that these people go through that we've all gone through. It's a very volatile job to have right now. Nobody likes cops. I mean, when you look in your rearview mirror on your way home, look in your rearview mirror. If there's a cop, crap, there's a cop behind me.
yeah, I'm nervous.
It's not like I'm going to pull over and give this guy a high five. You
Right.
know,
Right. It's a tough job. Um, let's see. That's all I've got. Anything else that you picked up that you want people to know?
well, I think what's important about the report is that the Snapchat parents need to know what their kids are putting out there, and they need to know what the videos are. But I think as they go back and they read the Snapchats on this, you know, we should be a gang. Let's make ourselves a gang. In 2022, that should have been a law enforcement in their mind. Oh crap, we got guys that want to be gangs. If we quash this now,
Right.
then we're solving a problem. That look what that problem caused the death of Preston Lord and the numerous other victims around. So that's number one. I think that was looked over and it shouldn't have been. But also, I think that, you know, suicide by cop, that's serious, serious talk on so many different levels, and it needs to be dealt with. I think you need to build your list of people, and you need to break down who we need to talk to. And every person on that Snapchat group list should have been talked to. I hope was talked to, and the parents can then say, I had no idea, but that's not going to happen again.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody told me that my child was writing things like that,
Right.
we would take action. If they had talked to the people in the group Snapchats, would that be in the police report or no?
No, I doubt it.
Okay.
I doubt it because there's
So
no
they
need.
may have.
Yeah, that I hope they have. They
They
may.
may have.
Well, maybe he's being kind, but hopefully they have. The police reports only talk about what the crime, how it occurred, the people involved, and the witnesses and the arrest. That's all that's going to be in the police report. They're not going to go into the intelligence of, you know, behind the scenes with Snapchat, who he talked to, and all this other stuff. A good aggressive police officer who probably was not in the room for all these meetings but knew what was going on probably would have said, yeah, let me see those names and I'll go find them and talk to them. And that's the type of police officer that you need working this gangs or anything like this. You need that officer who will go outside of what he's doing, outside of his normal job duties, and say, hey, Perry High School, this is who you got. Hey, Campo Verde, this is who you have. Basha, you have these people. And then we come together once a week, once a month, and talk about it and see what we did. It's not that hard.
Thank you so much for coming on the show again and being a resource for us and answering all of my questions. I really sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. My one last thing, if you label somebody a gang member, they need to be charged as a gang member. Otherwise, labeling does nothing. It does nothing at all. So I hope that they go back and charge these guys as gangs.
The gang member thing is interesting. Gilbert PD said, we're not releasing any information about who might be a gang member. And they cited some law, which I couldn't find. But how do we know who's in a gang?
Well, there's all kinds of gangs and they use this hybrid gang thing because there's no set boundaries, there's no age and no demographics of race or anything else. So a lot of knowing who's in a gang is just aggressive police work. Are these group of 15 people associating? Do they have a name? Are they traveling from one parking lot to another to beat the tar out of somebody? Are they involved in criminal activity? Whether there's signifiers. I think knowing how to identify a gang is a law enforcement problem. I think knowing how to talk to your child to see if they're in a gang is a parental problem. So that's my opinion. Every cop knows how to talk. Well, I hope every police officer knows how to talk to somebody about gang work and if they're involved in a gang. And they can go from there. It's part of the job. They should be doing it. Everybody I talk to, who you hooked up with? Are you hanging out with anybody? No, cool. Let's go on to the next question.
If there are parents who are wondering, I don't know what my kids are doing, I'm wondering, how do they have that conversation? What do they need to know to figure it out?
Well, I learned from my wife that if there's something off limits or something hard to talk to your child about, you better ask them. Because Tani will ask my kids anything. It's awesome. Me, I'm like, I don't shoot, what, maybe I don't want to know, maybe I don't want to hear, especially as they're older now. But it's you just, you're a parent. Cross that line. There are no lines in parenting.
Right.
You find out. You don't need a search warrant to go into your son or daughter's room.
You don't.
I do as a police officer. You don't as a parent.
Right.
So
Right.
that's what you have to do. Is and a lot of the problem is these parents don't have that bond or relationship with these kids because they spend more time, with their punk friends or their so-called friends or whatever it is, out committing crimes and running from the police. Everybody thinks it's cool to run from the police and everything else. It's not. So, yeah, just talk. You got to talk.
Lots of talking.
Lots of
All right.
talk.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you again soon if we need to. Hopefully we don't.
Look forward to it.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening to the Modern Divorce Podcast. Remember, anything you've heard today or anything you read online is not the replacement for actual consultation with an attorney and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Even if you called in and we spoke to you, you were anonymous and we don't have your details and you have not become a client of Modern Law. However, we would love to speak with you, or you should seek out the advice of legal counsel or counseling or any other expert near you. And if you have an idea for a show topic or you need to speak with an attorney in Arizona, you can reach me at info@mymodernlaw.com.